Alright, what's going on guys? Welcome to another video. For all of you who are new here or who didn't catch up on the build thread for the old 31 here, I thought I'd do a bit of a build breakdown on this car. It should be pretty interesting. I'll go through, there's been a few changes since the build actually went ahead. And I also did do a little bit of a build breakdown the first time I owned this car, which was a bit of a different setup. So it might be cool for you to go through and compare. I'll put the link for that video down in the description. But yeah, this car has got quite a bit of history with me. I've now owned it and built it twice. I made a bit of a video on the history of the car as well, which I will also put in the description. But for now, we're going to go on a bit of a build breakdown. I'm going to start at the rear of the car, work my way through on the body, and then we'll go to sort of the engine and work our way back through as far as the running gear goes back to the fuel system. So it's a 1989 R31 Skyline Executive, so a bit of a POV pack. It was originally an automatic. It has been converted to manual. So starting at the rear, we've got a four-corner 78, the 28 spline 4-pinion R31 Skyline diff, 389 ratio that's been welded, so it's rock solid. Rear end, we've got a dual sway bar setup, so twin doubled up stock sway bars, which keeps you nice and stiff. And we've also got max speeding rods, China eBay coilovers, which thus far I've definitely put through their paces and have not been able to break them. So actually pretty happy with those. In the front, I'm running also max speeding rods coilovers. Also tried my best to break them. Can't seem to break those. Also running a GK Tech roll center correction kit, which allows us to have quite a bit of lock, using that with S13 lower control arms, of which I cut off the stock lock stops and actually made some custom adjustable lock stops for the S13 control arms. Aside from that, using a stock R31 steering rack with CE Lancer rack ends and S13 tie rod ends. It sort of works out pretty good length for this setup, and the CE Lancer rack ends bolt straight into the R31 TRW rack. As far as brakes on the car, up front running a S13 turbo brake setup, so 280mm S13 turbo brakes. On the rear end, running stock R31 brakes for foot brake. Also running dual caliper setup thanks to RB Factory caliper mounts. Also running VS Commodore handbrake calipers dedicated for the hydraulic handbrake. Running stock R31 caster arms, which thus far I've not had an issue with. The car self-steer is amazing. I run about 5 degrees toe out. I say that very loosely because the alignment was done by myself. Everything on this car was done by myself, bar a few welds that were on the hot side that were done by my good friend Adam. Aside from that, everything on the car was done by myself, including the tune now, which is nice. Moving on to the engine. So the engine in this car actually was fished out of a skip bin some years ago. We rebuilt it on a pretty tight budget, so it's mostly stock parts, some reused parts, a few new parts which were necessary, but it is overall fairly stock RB30. That is with a stock head gasket and stock head bolts also. So running a cut and shut forward facing plenum on the cold side, paired up with a set of GTR 444cc injectors, which are controlled by a Microtech LT8 ECU. The hot side, we've stayed with the VLT stock cast manifold. The idea with staying with the stock cast manifold was to just keep reliability in the car. I've had a lot of issues in the past with the cheap Chinese stainless manifolds cracking and causing problems, so I decided to stay with the VL Turbo manifold. Now, we had some boost control issues to start with, so we ended up actually cutting and welding on an external gate provision to the VL Turbo manifold. So also running a Turbo Smart Ultragate 38mm 2-bolt wastegate on the VL Turbo manifold with just a eBay 3582 with a 0.64 rear housing. So quite a small housing, quite a lot of back pressure for this car with that manifold and the housing, but it does come on boost nice and hard. It's very punchy and it's a lot of fun to drive. So outside of that, we've got a 600 by 300 front mount intercooler, which is nice and tucked up and very large to keep those intake temps down. We've got a 44 row oil cooler on the car as well, just to keep those oil temps down at the track. And it's just running a stock R31 radiator with an RB25 viscous fan setup. I'm also running a 25% underdriven harmonic balancer, and the reason for that is obviously being a dedicated track car, it does see a lot of RPM, and I did get sick of replacing power steering pumps because of cavitation and causing problems in the pumps with big RPM. So the 25% underdriven harmonic balancer just relieves that issue a bit. We've got a full custom catch can setup on the car, which was sort of built by me around the generous ring gap. So we've got vents from the sump and the cover, which sort of help alleviate crankcase pressure due to blow-by, which helps ring seal twofold. Got a brand new XCD heavy duty clutch with an RB20 DET gearbox. So we're running the stock DET gearbox in this car, which is the weaker one. So running it only on 10 PSI thus far, just to try and keep the gearbox alive. I have had a lot of experience in braking these gearboxes with high power, so decided to limit this car with stock head gasket and stock head bolts with that RB20 DET gearbox to 10 PSI. Currently making 255 rear wheel horsepower at that 10 pound. And it seems to be quite happy there, even though the rings are having a bit of a hard time. But again, it's quite safe at that power level. Other things you'll find in the bay, we've got a brake master stopper, also made by RB Factory, and a S13 strut brace, which I've modified to fit the R31. So moving on to the exhaust system, it is a full 3-inch exhaust with 3 resonators built in and 3 V-bands. I put a flexi joint in the dump pipe just so that, as you can see, the car is quite low. So because I wanted to make it very low, I built the exhaust tucked up as hard as I can and also put a flex joint in the dump pipe just to ensure that nothing that hits the exhaust transfers that shock or that force up into the manifold or the turbo. Because like I said, I've had issues with cracking manifolds before. So trying to reduce the potential of that happening by all means by putting that flex joint in there. It's quite a good sounding car, although I'm pretty sure all of the resonators have been blown out by this point. They were just cheap ones off eBay. It's quite hollow sounding compared to when I first built it, but it does sound quite good. It's got a good note. Moving on to the fuel system, it is just a stock R31 fuel tank. There is no surge tank. Got our Walbro 255 in-tank pump, which feeds those GTR injectors, and it seems to be fine. It's very happy on that. So moving on to the inside of the car, I've got just a Bride Rep seat. Also got a GK Tech deep dish steering wheel on a Boss kit in there with the factory handbrake is retained, and I have the hydraulic handbrake set up on its own mount from RB Factory also. Go and check out his website if you haven't already. He makes a lot of great stuff for R31s. So that setup ergonomically is perfect for me. Really enjoy driving this car the way it's set out. Also got an Innovate AFR gauge on the dash, as well as just a Defi Advanced copy, just to keep everything under control, keep an eye on everything. All sensors are hooked up, and it seems to run pretty well. It's pretty happy. Outside of that, the car retains a full interior. Tried to leave the interior in at this iteration just because I wanted to keep it nice and tidy. The car is for sale. Before it went, I wanted to make this video for you all, explaining the build, doing a bit of a build breakdown, and that is my R31. So up the front for tread, we are running a NS2R, which is a semi-slick tyre. Seems to be really nice, especially I wanted to run the TI stock wheels on this car, which means I was limited by width. So I'm limited to a 6-inch wheel, so I can only fit X amount of tyre on that wheel. So the NS2R so far has proved to be a very grippy tyre for the size. Very happy with that. So that is in a 195 55 15. Very skinny small tyre, a lot of grip, a lot of fun. So that's on the TI wheels. With the S13 LCA and the GK Tech roll setting correction kit, I get quite a bit of track on the front, which really pushes that wheel into the outside of the guards and doesn't look too funny. On the rear, I'm running a 40mm bolt-on GK Tech spacer just to get the rear wheels to sit the same as the front to make sure it doesn't look so out of place also. So the car is very low on stock wheels. It's got quite a nice stance. I reckon it looks fairly stock, and with the way the exhaust built, it also doesn't sound too menacing either. So it's a very unsuspecting looking car, but it has quite a lot of steering lock and it is a lot of fun to drive. So that's a build breakdown for you guys. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.